Hi, I'm Laura Nelkin. Welcome to the companion video for Open Mind's Mystery Knit Along, clue number 1. I've been so excited for this day and I cannot wait to have an open mind with you. I've got lots to tell you about clue number 1. The most important thing is that this is a companion video. You'll need your pattern to work along, to knit the mystery knit along. None of my testers had a video when they were working on the mystery knit along, and their open minds all came out beautifully. I'm assuming that you have already wound your MC and your LY and you've done your gauge swatch. If you haven't done your gauge swatch, I go over information for that in the last video, and that's also written in your pattern. Don't skip that step. You want to make sure that you've done a gauge swatch and you get gauge so that you don't run out of yarn or have any issues as you're knitting along. You're only working with MC and LY in this clue, so those are the only 2 yarns you need to worry about right now. What I like to do when I knit a pattern is weigh my yarn before I start. You guys all got a digital scale. That was one of the materials that you need for open minds. So if you want on this clue, weigh your MC and your LY before you start knitting. And then when you're done with clue 1, weigh your MC and LY again, and then you'll just subtract that beginning number from the other weight you get, and that's how much yarn you used for clue number 1. I think information like that can be really helpful, and I suggest that you do that if you're somebody who likes to gather as much information as you can. I'm assuming you've read your pattern, and if you've read your pattern before you're watching this video, you're going to see that in clue number 1, you have to make a decision. But before you make that decision about what kind of mind you're making in clue number 1, you're going to work the cast on and the setup row. That's the same for whichever mind you choose, active mind or mellow mind. So let's jump right in with that cast on and do that together, and then we'll talk about the difference between the 2 minds, okay? All right, Open Minds starts with an I-cord cast on. That I-cord cast on starts with 3 stitches that are provisionally cast onto your needles. I'm going to show you quickly how to do a provisional cast on. We'll be using scrap yarn, a crochet hook, and a double pointed needle. But if you don't know a lot about provisional cast-ons and you want to learn more, I do have a whole separate video. It's about 45 minutes and it's a deep dive. It's a very geeky deep dive into the provisional cast-on. So if you watch this and you're intrigued and you want to learn more, or this is a brand new technique for you, there's a whole separate video for you to watch at some point. But I'm going to also show you what to do, and you can rewatch this a few times to learn how to do this. So let's jump right in. I've got some scrap yarn right here that is smooth and a similar weight to my working yarn. And I'm going to take that scrap yarn and I'm going to make a slip knot. And then I'm just going to move this out of the way so that's nice and clean for you. And then I'm going to take that slip knot and I'm going to put it in the crochet hook, on my crochet hook on my right hand, and kind of tighten it up, but not too much, just like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab a double pointed needle and I'm going to hold that double pointed needle parallel to my crochet hook. And I'm going to bring my yarn over both the needle and the crochet hook. And then I'm just going to pull that yarn through. And I've got 1 stitch on my needle already. Now I'm going to bring the yarn over the needle and the crochet hook, pull the yarn through, and do that once more. I really only need 3 stitches on my needle. So you just learned how to do that, and we're done. You gotta love it. So now I am just going to single crochet a few extra stitches so I know which end of my scrap yarn of this provisional cast on I'm gonna rip out from. Just remember, if you do a few extra single crochets right there, that's where we're unzipping. You can also tie a knot in this if you want, but I don't think that's necessary. And then I'm just going to trim that so it's not all long and in my way. So there's my provisional cast on, and now we are ready to start working I-cord. If you haven't worked I-cord before, the trick to I-cord is that you never turn your work. So that's why you're working with 2 double pointed needles right now, so that you can slide your stitches to the other end of your needle. So I am going to knit 1 row, and that gets me all set up. And I'm gonna have these live stitches here later when I unzip this for working the end of the I-cord cast on. And now I'm gonna take these stitches, slide them to the other end of the double pointed needle, and I'm going to continue to knit across. If you find that that first stitch is a little loosey-goosey, like mine is, you just pull right down on your tail and that tightens things up. Remember, with I-cord, you are never turning your work, so I'm just sliding those stitches to the other end and knitting. The pattern calls for you to knit for 22 rows, so you're gonna go ahead and knit I-cord for 22 rows, and then I want to show you what you're going to do next. Let's just zhuzh this out of the way, zhuzh the next thing in. Let's pretend on my double pointed needle that I have 22 rows worked. I have a few less than that just because you don't need to watch me do that many rows. And when you get to the end of your last 22nd row, you're gonna slide your stitches back to the other end of the needle, and with a circular needle, you're gonna go ahead and knit 3 stitches. And then you're gonna get rid of this double pointed needle. We're gonna use it maybe one more time, so just put it off to the side. And then you're gonna go ahead and turn your work like this, because you're gonna be picking up stitches along the top edge of this I-cord. But before you do that, go ahead and place a marker. And guys, this is all written into the pattern. So now I am going to go across my I-cord and pick up and knit 1 stitch in each of those 22 rows that you worked. So I'm just going across and I'm picking up 1 stitch in each of those 22 rows. I have less than 22, just remember that right now. You guys are doing great. Now, when I get to the end of this, and I've got my 22 stitches, we need to take those 3 stitches from the provisional cast on, put them back onto your double pointed needle, and we're gonna then knit across them. So I'm going to take this double pointed needle and I'm gonna pick up 1 stitch and 1 stitch. You just wanna make sure not to split things when you do this. And then 1 more stitch right here. You kind of have to turn your work a little bit to see that. And then not drop your needle so that you actually have them on there. If you have a hard time with this, sometimes it helps to grab a smaller double pointed needle. Now, once you have those stitches on your double pointed needle, you can go ahead and unzip your provisional cast on and just go like that, and it'll pull right out. Magic. And now you'll grab 1 more marker, place it onto your needle, and knit 3. If you split things, just back up and fix that. You can see I saw myself split that, so I backed up. And now you have worked the I-cord cast on. Look at that, magic. Now you are done with your double pointed needles. You're not gonna need to use them again for the rest of the pattern. Now you're gonna work the setup row. So you're gonna turn your work so the wrong side is facing. You're gonna slip 2 stitches purlwise with yarn in front. And now you are going to purl to the last 2 stitches, slipping those markers when you reach them. Just purling along with my friends. You guys really don't want me to sing while I knit. You'll all stop watching. And now, last stitch, and then we're gonna slip those last 2 stitches purlwise with the yarn in front. So that is your setup for open minds. Not hard at all. Watch this again if you need to, get this on your needles, ask questions if you have any. And now I really want to talk to you about choosing between an active mind and a mellow mind. I'm excited to see which team you guys are. Okay. Now I want to explain to you the differences between a mellow mind and an active mind. Since you've read your pattern, you see you have a choice for this clue. Mellow mind is simpler. It's a little mellower. The active mind is a little spicier. Your brain's going to be more involved in what's happening on your needles. And it's for, I wouldn't necessarily, it's for more advanced knitters. It's for people who like their knitting to be a little more challenging and people who like to be paying attention to every single stitch. So when I originally designed this, I designed it with active mind in mind, and then I decided maybe I should back up and do a simpler version as well. Both have been tested. I've seen testers' versions on both of them, and I like them both equally. So it's really up to you which you're in the mood for. The Mellow Mind starts with an 8-row setup, and then it has a 4-row repeat. It is not challenging knitting. There are 2 increases to learn. Well, 3, there's a yarn over. There's 2 decreases. The construction is exactly the same for Mellow Mind and Active Mind. So I'll teach you all of that with Mellow Mind. And then the Active Mind, the big difference, because the construction's the same, is that there's a 36-row repeat. 36-row setup and a 4-row repeat. So 36-row setup where you're really paying attention for 36 rows, getting yourself going, and then there's a 4-row repeat. So even active mind, once you get past that 36 rows, there is a rhythm to it and you're really following the stitches on your needles really beautifully. So a bonus that I have for you guys that you might have noticed in your pattern is that there are spreadsheets for you that go over stitch counts for both Mellow Mind and Active Mind. If you've never used a Google spreadsheet before, what you're gonna do is if you wanna mark those up and like mark row to row, you need to just download the spreadsheet and then you'll be able to use it and change it as much as you want. I've set permissions on that spreadsheet for no one but myself. Just download it. You'll have the permission to do that. And then go ahead and use those spreadsheets to help you keep track of your stitch count from row to row. I find spreadsheets like that pretty helpful, and I decided you guys might want to use them too. So I am going to show you how to work Mellow Mind, because if I show you the first 4 rows of Mellow Mind, I'm teaching you the construction, I am teaching you some increases, you'll really see what's happening on the needles, and then I'll go ahead and show you the more advanced things that I do in Active Mind. You won't even need to watch that if you're sticking with a Mellow Mind. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, Mellow Mind knitters, Active Mind knitters, you're watching this as well because I'm getting you going with your clue number 1. We're starting with Mellow Mind with row number 1. I'm going to be looking at the chart with you. All of my charts also have written instructions, so you can choose which you want to use. But basically what's happening with Mellow Mind is you have a right mind, a left mind, and a middle mind. And you'll be working the right mind, and then be working the middle mind, and then be working the left mind. And that corresponds to the right, middle, and left of your shawl. How slick is that? So let's look down at the chart. And I have sticky notes right here because I love using sticky notes to kind of line up on my chart so it's really easy to see what you're working and your whole chart doesn't swim on you. So I am just getting those lined up over row number 1. So all we can see is row number 1. And very quickly, you are going to notice that the middle mind chart right here, this is the right, this is the middle, this is the left, has 3 rows for row 1. That is because you are working 3 rows in the middle mind, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So don't be surprised by that. What we're going to do is start right over here with row 1, keeping in mind that this pattern uses an integrated I-cord edging that has elasticity built into that. That elasticity will come in row 3, so don't be surprised when we get there. So I am starting with row 1 right now, and I'm just going to knit as I read the chart. Remember that every symbol on a chart represents a stitch. So that first stitch is a knit stitch, that second stitch is a knit stitch, the third stitch, if I look over at my key, is a make 1 right. So you're going to pick up this bar right here, put that onto your needle, and then work into the front of that stitch, and that gives you a right leaning increase. We'll do that again, don't worry. And now I am going to knit 1, and that is row 1 of the right mind. So I am going to, at this point, you guys ready to bring in your LY? I'm going to drop my MC, and then I'm going to go get my LY. And the first 2 rows, 1A and 1B, are knit with your LY. Give yourself about a 6-inch tail. And now you're going to work across the middle mind with the LY. And you're going to knit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now you are going to knit 2 together twice. And you're going to yarn over 4 times. I love big old yarn overs. And now we are going to slip, slip, knit twice. All of these directions are written out in the abbreviations. So if you haven't worked a slip, slip, knit before and you want to see that written out, those are written in the abbreviations. And now I am going to knit 7. Guys, I'm knitting up to the marker. Gotta love that. When you get to your marker, you're gonna turn your work, go back in the other direction. I'm just getting my main color behaving. And now I am going to knit back. As I knit back, when I come to the second stitch of the yarn over, that is a purl stitch. So I'm going to purl that, and then I'm going to knit the next stitch. That's the third stitch of the yarn over, and then I'm going to purl 1 into the 4th stitch. And there's that big old hole right there. I love it. And now I am going to knit to the marker and turn my work again. I had so much fun swatching and playing to see if this would work. And it works because of the lace weight yarn. It just really falls into place beautifully in this. So now I'm going to turn my work. Let me just slap that over there so it's not in my way. One thing you guys will notice, I'm going to slow down and do that again. I've knit this so many times, I'm just used to doing it in my sleep. I'm bringing the LY over to the right so that it goes over the MC right there, so that the MC is grabbing it. And now I am going to knit across with the MC. And that is the last row of row 1 of your middle mind. So I'm knitting to the marker, and then I'll be slipping the marker. slipping that marker. And now I'm gonna work the left mind. I'm gonna knit one. I'm gonna make one left right there. So I'm gonna pick up that bar in between the stitches right there, put that on to the left hand needle, and then knit into the back of that bar so that I've got a left leaning increase. And then I am going to knit 2. And that is row 1 of the Mellow Mind. Now you're going to turn your work and move up your sticky notes. I know everybody has different tools that they love to use for charts. I am the queen of the sticky notes. I just bought a whole new pack and I was so excited about it. I chose pastels for spring. Okay, sorry, that was an aside. So I'm gonna slip 2 stitches, and now I want you to see this. I'm starting over on the left side and moving to the right. I'm slipping 2. These 2 stitches are purl stitches because I'm on the wrong side of the work, and then I'll be knitting across row 2 of the Middle Mind. So I'm gonna purl 2 there, slip the marker. Remember that your charts are written out as well if you're not a big chart reader. I love charts. I feel like Mellow Mind, if you're not a big chart reader, that Mellow Mind could be a fun way to learn how to read charts because it's so simple and you might really start to intuit how the chart is working. And now you're gonna slip your marker, get that guy out of the way, bring your yarn to the front because now you are going to purl 2 and then slip those last 2 stitches purlwise. So that is row 2. Let's go ahead and quickly work rows 3 and 4, and then you are good to go with everything that you need to know for Mellow Mind. Now the beginning of row 3 has something new. We're ready for something new. Do you see this little cute little squiggly icon right here on row 3? That says, if we look over at the key, knit 1 wrapping yarn twice. If you remember, I said that Open Minds has an integrated I-cord edge that has some elasticity and flexibility to it. What you're doing is elongating the second stitch on your needles, and elongating that stitch with the extra wrap gives you flexibility so that your thong will stretch out along the top edge. I'm just joking, it's your shawl, it's not your thong. Come on. I'm gonna get some emails about that one. All right, so row 3, I am knitting 1, and then I'm knitting 1, wrapping the yarn twice around the needle and pulling that through. And now I'm going to make 1 right. So I'm gonna put that bar onto the needle and work that. And now I'm going to knit 1, and now I'm gonna make 1 left. And the way I've heard this said is I left the front door open. So if you wanna make a left leaning increase, if you go into the front of that bar, lift the left needle, and then work it through the back, then you have a left leaning increase. I'll show you how to do the trick for the right on the other side. And now we're going to knit 1, and I'm going to knit 3 right here, and then knit 2 together, yarn over twice, slip, slip, knit. And now I'm going to knit, I feel like I want to count on my chart, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let's make sure 1, 2, 3, 4, yep, 8 stitches. There's nothing worse than making a mistake while I'm knitting with you guys on camera here. There's the first 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Knit 2 together, double yarn over, slip, slip, knit. I just got to get myself some more yarn, sorry about that. Knit 3. And that is row 3 of the middle mind. And now I'm going to slip that marker. I am going to knit 1. I am now on a make 1 right, so let me show you how to do that. From what I've heard is if I left the front door open, then for the make 1 right, I'll be right back. So I'm going to go in from the back to the front with my needle and then work into the front of that stitch. And there's your make 1 right. And now I'm going to knit 1. I left the front door open, go into the front of that stitch, work it. And then I'm at the last 2 stitches. This stitch I'm going to knit wrapping the yarn twice and then knit 1. That integrated I-cord edging happens all the way through all of clue 1. When I get to the end of row 4, I'm going to tell you guys a trick to know when it's time to elongate and when it's not time to elongate, which is going to make things really easy. So row 4, the only thing that is different on row 4 is when we get to that elongated stitch, to that second stitch, we're just going to drop the extra wrap. So you drop it down and it just adds a little more yarn right here and loosens things up. And now I'm going to purl to the marker. I am going to slip the marker. And now I'm knitting across except for that second stitch of the yarn over right here. I will purl that. I know I say this with a lot of my patterns, but I really find this pattern to be incredibly intuitive. So once you get it set up and going, it's really easy to see what's happening on your needles, and I don't think you're gonna even need to look at the chart that much. Now I am back to the right mind. I'm going to bring my yarn to the front and I am going to purl right there and then slip those last 2 stitches with that extra wrap. There you go. So that is rows 1 through 4. The one thing I don't think I showed you as I was working through that is I do carry up the LY on row 3. So grab the LY with your working yarn with your MC so that the LY gets carried up behind. If you ever have rows where you forget to do that, it's okay. The LY is so light that it just blends right into that edge right there on the back and you don't need to worry about it. I did it both ways on my shawl and you cannot see it in the end. So let's look at this Mellow Mind chart really quickly. We worked through rows 1 through 4. You've learned everything that you need to know. There's nothing else I need to show you. Now you're gonna work rows 5 through 8, and that sets up your repeat. Basically what you're doing is increasing 2 stitches on your right mind and left mind on every right side row. So that's 4 stitches for every right side row. And then you're just knitting the extra stitches you're increasing as you repeat those 4 rows. Super easy. You'll end up with a stockinette stitch triangle on each side of your middle mind rectangle. If you remember, I told you there's a trick for knowing when it's time to elongate a stitch at the beginning and end of the row. You're always doing those elongated stitches for the I-cord when you are working a row 3. So when you're working with the main color going across the middle mind, that is when you work those elongated stitches. I marked those for you in the spreadsheet. So if you're working from the spreadsheet, I gave you a clue when you're doing a double wrap and a single wrap. Really try to make things easy for you. So if you're working Mellow Mind, you're good to go. I can't wait to see what your mind looks like. There's been so many fun yarn choices. I think we've all gotten quite enabled while we're all getting ready to work this mystery knit along, and I'm really excited to see them. If you are working the active mind or interested in working the active mind, I am going to show you what's a little different about working the active mind, and then I'm going to show you the end of the active mind because there's something that you need to do that I need to show you, and that's a bit of a spoiler. So don't watch ahead right now unless you want to see that one part of the beginning of active mind or you want to see to the end of active mind, okay? Let's do that. Okay, active mind knitters, or those of you who are just kind of interested in what active mind looks like, I'm going to look at the chart for active minds, show you what is a little bit different than Mellow Mind, and then I'll be showing you at the very end of Clue 1 for active mind what you'll be doing to your finished active mind at the very end of the clue. So if we look down at the chart together, the first thing you're going to notice is that this chart is a little bit bigger. It's got 36 rows to it, but the concept is the same, where the first 3 rows on row 1 of the middle mind are worked with row 1 from the right and left side. So the construction is exactly the same. My needles right now, I've actually already worked rows 1 and 2 because they're the same as Mellow Mind. So let's just take those post-it notes and move them up to row 3. And we're going to be working row 3 and 4 together. And this time I'll show you what it's like to catch that LY at the back when you go to work row 3, since I missed that on the Mellow Mind. Okay, so we are all set up. I got my yarn, get to knit. Row 3 is a row that has an elongated stitch. So we're gonna do that again. I'm just gonna move this chart up a little bit so I've got some room to knit with you. And I am going to knit 1 for the first stitch of active mind. I am going to tell my stitches to behave. I am going to wrap the yarn twice for that second stitch. And now I am going to make 1 right. So I'm going to come into that bar from the back to the front, making sure not to split your yarn when you do that. And I am going to make 1 right there. And now I am going to work a yarn over, and I am going to knit 1, and then I'm going to make 1 left, and now I'm going to knit 1, and then I'm going to slip my marker, and I'm going to take my LY and bring that LY over the MC so that you're catching the LY with the MC. And now I am going to knit 3, and then I'm going to knit 2 together, double yarn over, slip, slip, knit, and now I'm going to knit 8. Now you're going to knit 2 together, double yarn over, slip, slip, knit, knit 3. And now you are onto your left mind. So you are going to knit 1, and then you're going to make 1 right. And then you're going to knit 1, and then you're going to yarn over and make 1 left. and then knit one, wrapping the yarn twice, and knit the last stitch. And that is row 3. And now we're gonna work row 4 together. And row 4 does have 2 stitches that you haven't seen before on the left and right minds. So you'll see that there's a yellow box and a green box. I color coded these to make them easier. And the yellow box is a knit one together through the back loop on the right side, but we're on a wrong side. So we're gonna purl one together through the back loop. And then a green box on the wrong side is a knit one together through the back loop. So let me keep an eye on that while I get ready to work row 4. Remember, since you worked those elongated stitches on the last row, you're going to be dropping that extra wrap right there. And now that first stitch is a purl one together through the back loop, and you're going to work that stitch. And now the next stitch is a purl stitch, and then your next stitch is a knit one through the back loop. So you'll bring your yarn to the back so you can knit one, and then you are going to purl 2 stitches. And now you are going to slip your marker, bring your yarn to the back, and you are going to knit to the second stitch of your yarn over, and then purl that stitch. And then you are going to knit to the second stitch of the next double yarn over. And you're going to purl that stitch, and then you are going to knit to the marker, and you're going to slip your marker, and now you are on the right mind. Just get a little more yarn so we're good to go here. And if you look over at your right mind chart, you're purling those first 2 stitches, then you've got a green box, so you're going to knit one through the back loop, and then you're going to purl a stitch, and then you're going to purl one through the back loop, and then you're going to slip those last 2 stitches. There you have it, row 4. So that's actually everything to show you stitch-wise in the charts. You'll notice if you look at the charts that there's columns of twisted stitches and that your increases are shifting where your increases are happening, and there are yarn overs at the base of those twisted stitches. So now I'm going to show you what happens with that knit column right in the middle there, but don't watch this next step. Don't watch this next step if you don't want the shape of clue 1 to be spoiled. Spoiler, here we go. So this is what Open Mind's clue 1 looks like if you're working the active mind when you make it through. This is clearly a mini shawl. You are working something a tad bit bigger than this, but this is enough on my needles to show you what is happening when you get to that final row of the active mind. And I just want to work the first few stitches with you so you can see how fun this step is. It's really important to do this step and not skip it. So I'm going to knit the first 2 stitches. I'm going to knit the next stitch through the back loop. I am going to drop the next stitch. I'm going to drop it, and I'm going to let it ladder down. I'm going to pull my knitting apart. I absolutely love doing this. Isn't that fun? I'm trying not to lose those stitches on my needles while I have a great time. You can wait to ladder that all the way down to the end. That is laddering down to your yarn over. And now you're going to yarn over twice, and you're going to purl 1 through the back loop, and then you're going to knit 6. I think I might need to give myself a little more working yarn here. I think I wasn't generous enough with myself on my swatch here. There you go. And now I am going to purl 1 through the back loop. I am going to drop that next stitch. That stitch is going to ladder down. It is so fun to do. It ladders right down to its yarn over, all the way down. And now I'm going to make a triple yarn over and continue on following that final row 1 for the right side in pattern. Then you'll work the final row 2, and you are all ready for clue number 2. Okay, everybody, clue number 2 comes out on May 19th. So that is 1 week from today. I think you're gonna have a fun weekend knitting on clue number 1. Don't forget to post photos and ask questions in the Ravelry group, in the Facebook group. We are excited to help you. We have a no knitter left behind policy. So if you ask questions, we will get you going and get you on track. And I am so excited to see your open minds. See you next week.